I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call beginning with Commissioner Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Folson.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
I'm here. Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
All present and accounted for. All right, public comment.
Is the camera on?
Uh-oh. Sorry about that.
Becky's not here.
That's what happens when Becky's not here, yeah.
She usually reminds me. We got to do over from the beginning?
No.
Okay.
Just wait till the light turns red out, I'd suggest.
Yeah, when it gets done blinking. Takes about 30 seconds.
Then when we have to talk about this.
No, don't tell Becky.
Blame it on the storm last time.
I'm going to be in trouble. One job. I had one job.
Let me put that sitting down before I forget it, Jeff.
Remember that list?
Yep. Didn't have a sticky for
What did you
it.
say if your grandkids did?
That's what happened. A sticky. Should be.
Here, we're waiting for the recording to start.
Tell a joke, Mrs. Chairman.
Oh, no, that's okay.
It's on.
We're good.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Well, welcome. And we had a little technical difficulty with the first, but we have done the pledge and we have called the roll. All are present accounted for. We have no public comment for the beginning of the meeting, so I'm going to move on to administrative business. Mr. Hawthorne, do you have anything? Okay. Any of the other commissioners have anything?
I don't have anything.
Just had one. Did commissioners have a chance to read the letter to the editor on Saturday, July 1st? It talks about, again, if the county has a flat mill levy, it will automatically raise your taxes 14.8%.
Yeah, I saw
Countywide.
Countywide.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is not true.
That is not true. So I just wanted people that read that.
Yes, but
That
when
is
we have-
no way is that true.
And
Other elected
we're working
officials.
to only raise the budget, the cost of living, which is around 4% this year.
Yeah,
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
3.7, something like that.
Yeah.
And that was the valuation increase, correct? Initially.
Right.
So they're associating that with a tax.
Yes.
Tying it together.
But when we
It's
have
just as inaccurate as
Representative
it
Proctor sharing that as fact, people think that that's truth, and it is not.
And then I had another one that was doing some research and found the back in 1998, Governor Bill Graves reports that he wants to eliminate taxes on your motor vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And planned on doing that, but I guess that didn't go anywhere either.
No.
We're still paying them.
That's
well,
awesome.
some of us are.
Yes,
Yeah.
not all. Okay, well, we're going to move on to the consent
I have
agenda.
one
I'm
thing.
sorry, go ahead.
This is for Mr. Lawfrey or the county councilor. Getting calls still on the roads around the project out in that area. And here's what people are saying. They're saying, we have a hard surface road on Sandusky and it's limited to 40 mile an hour. And then people are saying, and you are allowing near the project on dirt roads 55 mile an hour. But that seems hypocritical and it doesn't seem as safe as it could be. So can you explain to the public why that is?
Well, Commissioner, as you know, statutorily, roads speeds are set at 55 miles an hour if it's an unposted road. So in Leavenworth County, if there were no postings on Sandusky, for instance, it would be 55. It wouldn't be the 40 that's on there now. But as those roads have been posted, like Sandusky's posted at 40, George Road's posted at 35, I think. Those were posted after an appropriate study, as far as I'm aware. Wasn't here when they were posted or built, so I don't know that. But I would assume they were done appropriately. So we statutorily they allow us some flexibility, but our resolution at the state county level states that we will conduct a speed study before we change signage.
So what we've learned is statutorily, we have the right to make the adjustment on the speed, according to Kansas statutes. But we have a resolution that's in effect that proclaims that it lowers the speeds on county roads to 35 mile an hour. But then in the next paragraph, it requires an extensive traffic study in order for you to actually make that happen. It actually, the reading of it would seem that the intent was to lower the speeds on the roads to 35 mile an hour if I read it.
Following a traffic study.
Well, but it's kind of the way it reads, number one, that the maximum speed on all non-hard surface roads, rock, gravel, or dirt, shall be 35 mile per hour unless otherwise posted. So that seems to establish their initial intent. And then they kind of undermine themselves with the second part of it, which
It's not
indicates the
undermining,
traffic.
it's following the MUTCD manual.
Well, but we have a legal opinion that was issued by the county councilor that we have the right in an emergency or in a road construction situation to lower those speeds. And what we have citizens out in the area are saying, we have hard surface roads, Sandusky, very nice road, and we have people restricted to 40 mile an hour, but we're refusing to change this document.
That's correct.
And because we're refusing to change this document,
That's correct.
we have people on on the dirt roads running 55 mile an
You
hour.
are correct.
So the folks out in the county are saying, that seems a little hypocritical and strange.
Well, Sandusky in 1982 was a KDOT project. There was a traffic study, there was KDOT funding, which is County Road 4, completed that, and that's where the speed limit was established. So it went through the process.
Yes, and we know that from the attorney's interpretation that we were given, written attorney opinion, that we have the right as a commission to lower the speeds on those nearby roads for the purpose of enhancing safety, and this board is not doing so.
That's correct.
I don't
Which
know
is-
what form of government. Your mobocracy government's
There-
not going to work.
there's no
here.
mobocracy.
No. We're not going to get into that. No,
That's-
it is correct. We had a vote of the Board of County Commissioners, and the majority of the Board of County Commissioners stated that we were not going to adopt the resolution you had requested, and that is correct. That is a fact. That is factual. And it is also factual that it is better to follow procedure, follow the laws that exist in order to protect the safety of our citizens as well. There are many times when decisions that we make may not be the most popular decisions, but they are decisions that are in the best interest of the county as a whole. And we have a public works director, we have staff who have indicated that it is better to do this properly than to react. We can't react to situations.
Well, we were trying to follow the procedures properly when the board said, including yourself.
That's correct.
You stated that it wasn't on the agenda, and we had the staff spend staff time on a resolution that would change.
You had
the
staff.
and we followed the procedure, and you still did not
That's correct.
The procedure
do
was
the
a
right
vote.
thing.
And
You didn't do the right
your
thing.
vote.
No, you felt, in your opinion, that we did not do the right thing. There is a
I
difference.
continue to feel that way,
And I'm glad
I'm
that
going to
you feel that
continue
way.
to. And there was a change, though. The change was that we believed that we could get the speed limits that are established of 35 mile per hour where they were posted. We could get additional signage. But what staff found was that almost none of those roads have signage now. So therefore, because they don't have signage now, we can't lower the speeds on those roads. So that's a new fact that came out since we voted.
Okay,
So-
explain to me how, and please explain why it is we have a speed limit right outside of here that's posted at 30 miles an hour. I see people traveling 40 miles an hour down that road. They pass me on a regular basis going 40 miles an hour. It's posted. It says 30 miles an hour. People need to learn to observe safe
and appropriate driving habits. And we can't force that on people. That is something that people just need to do because it's the right thing to do.
Well, I agree with you on that. I don't disagree with you. We
So
need
we
to follow
can
the
post-
speed limits because it's the right thing to do. But on the other hand, the sheriff has said he cannot enforce the speed on the roads unless it is properly signed. And we found that on the connecting roads, there is absolutely no signage at all.
So are you saying that what you feel, and the majority of taxpayers, because maybe we need to put it to a vote, but the majority of taxpayers want all the speed limits on gravel roads in Leavenworth County to be 35 miles an hour? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is,
Is that
near
what
this
you're saying?
project,
No,
near this
because we're going to have
project,
projects that go throughout the history of our county where we're going to continue to have road projects. The state is going to continue to hopefully give us funding. We're going to continue to have roads closed and repair them and work on them. That is going to continue to happen. And bridges. So are you saying that you want every road in Leavenworth County to be, if it is gravel and not hard surface, to be 35 miles an hour? Yes or no?
what I'm saying is that we had a policy drafted by staff that would allow them, when there is a project, to lower the speed. Because the vote of the commission was no, now we have 55-mile-an-hour roads that are less than safe, and we cannot lower those speeds.
Okay, but they will be safe.
We had a policy.
Once there's no construction around them, they'll be safe at 55 miles an hour then? If the project is done. So they're going to be safe then at 55 miles an hour after the project is over?
Well, I think we have a resolution currently in effect that is basically what you're saying, but it depends where it's signed.
At the end of the day, you're still asking staff to go against the MUTCD mandate.
That's correct.
And I can't
That
do
is what you
I'm
have.
asking staff to follow the state statutes. We have an attorney's opinion that says we're allowed to. We have a drafted policy by staff. It is completely legal because we asked for an attorney's opinion, and it is a dangerous situation out in my neck of the woods, and I'm going to continue to bring this up.
That's fine. I think that we are going to continue to say that we have had a vote of the Board of County Commissioners.
And you need to respect the vote of the sport.
I respect the vote of the board, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to bring up the feelings of the constituents.
Of how many?
I have a ream of emails that I received. A number of them.
1,000 pages.
Well,
No, that's
I have a lot of constituent. I haven't counted them. So, but I have a lot of constituent contacts, and I have especially recently farmers are calling me and saying, "We're out on these roads with farm equipment. They thought it was 35, so they said, well, let's just post it 35, guys. Just post it 35. And then we find out that we can't post it even 35 because the roads are 55. And we have farmers out there with their equipment, people going 55 mile an hour, and the sheriff cannot enforce it because it's not signed.
Well, that's correct, but people were going to be going 55 miles an hour on those gravel roads regardless.
It's correct, and you don't care.
I choose to follow statutes and things that are done properly.
The statutes allow it. We have a legal opinion.
No.
Yes, we do.
The MUTCD mandate.
We have a legal opinion that says we're allowed to change it.
It's not even on the agenda.
It's on administrative business.
Well,
we're not voting on anything today. So.
Well, I believe we should, and I would certainly be willing to present a motion
I'm not asking for a motion. We have not had this on an agenda.
It's been a consistent agenda issue.
It's your issue.
Personal.
But we need to stop and move on to our next piece of business.
I continue to object, and I certainly believe...
Your objection is noted.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman.
There's 15 minutes of my life. I'm not getting
Okay, no, that's enough, please. Now, we are moving on to the consent agenda.
No more administrative business. Madam Chair, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second. I need to check registry.
Okay. And Madam Chair, remove that motion. I make a motion that we pull the check registry from the consent agenda and accept that version.
Second.
Motion second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the check register section of the consent agenda.
Second.
Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Commissioner Fulpson.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Okay. Now we're going to do formal board action. We need to consider a motion to approve Resolution 2023-15, a rezone request from RR5 to RR 2.5 located at 24971 and 00000 Tonganoxie Drive. Welcome.
Good morning. Before you is a request to rezone two parcels at 24901 Tonganoxie Drive from Rural Residential 5 to Rural Residential 2.5. The applicant is requesting to rezone this property to match the existing zoning to the west and to the north of their parcels. This property also is designated as residential 2.5 minimum acres in the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. They also, based off of staff's review and the Planning Commission's consideration, have met all of the 7 factors to be considered for a rezone. The Planning Commission did hear this request at their June meeting, and they voted to recommend approval to this body of the rezone. So if you have any further questions, their staff report has been provided for you. The applicant agent is also in attendance.
No protest petition.
No protest petition on this one. At least our office did not receive one.
I had one question. The fire chief talking about need to upgrade water lines.
Mm-hmm.
This is a rezone. This isn't a plat.
Correct. We obviously send it out to the fire districts, or we have in the past, for review. His response was that he was concerned about water capacity in this area due to the current development that's going on, and if there's future development on this site, that it may potentially impact the water capacity or water pressure in that area. Usually that is handled during the platting process, but I think he just wanted to make everybody aware that that was a concern he had.
He's a hydraulic engineer?
I do not know what his accreditations are.
Okay, so wouldn't that be up to the water district and their engineering staff to make that comment?
Correct. I think from his perspective, he was concerned about the fire hydrants that are in the area.
But some water districts don't provide fire hydrants or fire protection.
That's true.
So, okay.
And most don't provide a lot of water.
Yeah.
And those
You ready for a motion?
they have a hydrant.
Anything
Any
else?
other questions?
If not, I make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-15, a rezone request from RR5 to RR 2.5 located at 24971 and 00000 Tonganoxie Drive.
Second.
Motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Now we need to consider a motion to approve Resolution 2023-16, a rezone request from RR5 to planned unit development located at 17271 and 17251 Hollingsworth Road.
Great. As mentioned, this is a request to rezone the property from Rural Residential 5 to a planned unit development district. A planned unit development district, just a really quick history, is essentially creating your own zoning district that establishes uses, it establishes bulk and height restrictions. It's essentially creating your own zoning district. Before you is a request to create a planned unit district for a residential subdivision. However, there is an airstrip that currently lies on the property. Due to the location of that airstrip, being able to develop that property out to meet our current zoning standards was determined to be very difficult to do. So before you is a proposal to create a PUD, essentially establishing the standards by which they want to develop out their two parcels here. Currently the property has 2 houses. They are proposing to add 5 additional lots where houses could be located on. They are also proposing to create what I call accessory lots on the other side of the airstrip to be able to use that property as well. The accessory lots would only be for airplane hangars and or fuel storage. However, they would still have to meet all of the applicable building codes for both of those to be able to develop those lots out. Their intention is that the property owners on the west side of the airstrip would be able to buy those accessory lots and be able to build their hangars if they so choose. If not, those accessory lots will have to remain in the ownership of the HOA that is being established as part of this subdivision. Because there is an airstrip on the property, obviously it is under the control in some respect by the FAA. However, our staff is not FAA certified or FAA reviewers, so we based it off the regulations that we have in past subdivisions that we have approved in this county. You will note that we are recommending that they maintain a 100-foot setback from the airstrip for the houses and a 50-foot setback from the hangars on the east side. Other than that, they are also going to be using a cross-access easement to access those 7 properties that will be created per the subdivision.
I have a question on that.
Yeah,
Is that,
sure.
that cross-access easement, is it going to be required to be hard surfaced?
No, per our cross-access easement regulations, we do not have design requirements on roads. They can have a gravel road per previous decisions by this county. We don't really have restrictions on
Well, we had a decision on a PUD down in the south part of the county that we required a hard surface road at Joy Meadows.
We've changed since then.
I mean, we adopted this policy, but I didn't know PUD is kind of a different type of development, so I didn't know if we were on a PUD if we were going to require hard surfacing or not.
There is no mandated requirement that we can find within the existing policy. So
Okay,
I
but-
can't speak to the one that's on the south end of the county, I believe, where you did do the asphalt. But as it stands today, staff can't require it.
Okay, well, just want to point that out.
Right.
That was
That's
just
when
one of the conditions.
we changed that, Mike, after we,
We adopted the policy.
after
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So yeah, they have provided plans per the cross-access easement article in the subdivision regulations. They have had a preliminary plat approval for that subdivision at the same meeting that this rezone was considered. Their final plat is under review per this decision here. Again, everything else has been provided in the staff report, but if you have questions, obviously staff is here and also the applicant agent and the owners are in attendance.
Questions?
No, I went and looked at this.
I think
Got
we
the
have,
road there between Hollingsworth and Donahue.
right?
It was brought
It's
up
not
in
too
the,
far off of Blacktop.
Right.
Blacktop ends there just to the
Right, it's not
east
far.
of that. It's not far.
so I know when I watched the planning board meeting on this, it was brought up that they were going to have fuel on site, and I don't understand the question even. I mean, they're not going to have as much fuel on this airstrip as a lot of farms I know have tanks, so that's not even an issue.
Just a fuel truck, is that what it's going to be? Or?
No, those have a barrel
But they
on
have to be
them.
designed
Yeah.
and properly designed and lined and everything, so it's,
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah. And I don't know if they were thinking of jet fuel maybe, and if they know, jet fuel is less flammable than your charcoal grill at home.
Out there.
John, do you have?
Lighter fluid, so.
I think the intent of the questioning was to clearly define that the building or the storage of the fuel would have to be classified under the current adopted building code, and the construction of the adjoining area would have to accommodate those requirements. That's the intent of that question.
I have no other questions.
If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion. Anybody?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-16, a rezone request from RR5 to Plan Unit Development located at 17271 and 17251 Hollingsworth Road.
Second.
Motion and second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Well, that was pretty simple.
It was.
Okay, now we're going to consider a motion to conditionally approve Resolution 2023-17, a special use permit for Faster Dynamics, an auto service and repair shop located at 00000 George Road. George Road.
You got them all right, Vic.
Okay.
Just a clarification, this is not on that
This is
stretch
the
of
other
George Road.
George Road.
Okay, before you is a request for a special use permit for Faster Dynamics LLC. The application is to be able to operate an auto service station and repair site at 00000 George Road. The applicant has provided a site plan showing the proposed 80 by 85 foot structure where the auto business will be operated out of. They have also included on that site plan a proposed house. I believe their plans are to eventually move onto this site. However, they would like to build the shop first. They're proposing an auto shop where they will primarily be doing auto repair. They anticipate up to 15 customers a week, so approximately 3 customers a day. They are proposing to operate Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 2 p.m. Majority of the customers will be driving onto the property. However, they do some custom work, so on occasion they may have to use a trailer to transport the vehicle to the site. However, they indicated that would be very rare. It's not a regular occurrence per his current business model. He also indicated that he does have contracts with local fire districts, so he does anticipate to have fire vehicles on the site, both passenger and commercial vehicles, but that happens a couple times a year. It's not a regular occurrence. The George Road is in a gravel road. It is a gravel local road. The area around this property is zoned rural residential 2.5. However, there is a commercial business that is in operation at the corner of George and 207th, about 600 feet to the east of this parcel. The Planning Commission did consider this request at their June meeting, and they recommended approval to you 8-0. So if you have any other questions, again, a lot of information has been provided in the staff report, but I believe the applicant is also in attendance.
And it says on factors to be considered, number 4, you've got conditions 9, 10, and 11. Can you just speak on those,
So,
if you haven't already?
Sure. So number 4 is the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. And on all special use permits, we consider multiple factors under that category. The first is noise. So will the proposed use create additional noise that is not already existing in that neighborhood? The majority of businesses do usually create additional noise, which is why we put a restriction that all noise generated from the business shall be limited to 60 decibels as measured from the property line. The applicant was given this. They said that they could maintain it. He is proposing per his application that all of his business will be operated inside of this building. He does not anticipate any type of outdoor operations, whether it be storage or actually the mechanics of his business. So he felt that he could meet that requirement. The next is traffic. Traffic to the site will be limited. We did have our engineering consultant review this request, and per the information that was provided by the applicant, there was not enough traffic to be considered a big enough change to require an actual traffic impact study. The 15 trips to and from the site per week is within normal range for non-traffic study SUPs. Lighting, the applicant indicated no use of exterior lighting with the exception of some security lighting. Again, per his application, that meets our criteria usually when we're reviewing it. However, we do place another restriction on all of our SUPs that lighting from a business shall not increase the net gain of lighting on the property by 0 foot candles, meaning they're not creating additional light nuisance on adjoining properties. Outdoor storage, as mentioned, he had indicated that all of his work will be occurring inside the proposed building, including storage. The structure is large enough and his clientele is small enough. He anticipates that all vehicles that he's working on will actually be stored in the building at all times. We did place the condition that he would have to maintain that no storage, no vehicles, nothing would be allowed to be outside with the exception of a dumpster, which shall be screened per, again, our regulations. Parking, because it is a business, we do review parking. There's enough area on his property and the driveway that he's proposing to store or to have enough parking for customers if they are on site. So that factor has been met. Visitors/employees, the applicant has indicated that there's only one employee, which is himself. He will be driving to and from the site. Obviously, if they build a house and move on there, then he will be on site. So that will reduce his traffic at that point. But he does not anticipate hiring any new employees. He intends to have this as a one-man shop. Again, as mentioned, they expect 15 visitors a week. So that would be the maximum amount of visitors he could have on the property per our proposed conditions. And then waste, because this is a vehicle business, there is anticipated waste that would occur, and he has already indicated that he will comply with all local, state, and federal regulations in regards to properly storing, maintaining, and then disposing of the chemicals and byproducts from his business.
Thank you, Amy.
Chair, I got one question. Shouldn't this be a rezone, being there's not a residence there?
An auto repair business, per our table of uses, is allowed a special use permit in that zoning district.
With a residence there?
There's, as far as we read these regulations, there is no requirement for the residents to be there, like a home-based business would require a residence. During an SUP, it is by nature a special use for that particular underlying zoning district. We don't see in the regulation where it requires that. So that's why the narrative is the way it is.
Commissioner Stevens?
You said that they have a plan to build a house. What's the time frame for that?
I don't know the specifics. Like I said, I believe the applicant is in attendance. If you would.
Okay, what's your time frame on the house?
Because I heard an if instead of a when.
Once this is granted, you cannot require them
Right.
to build that house at any time.
I'm not saying, I just want to know what his plan is. I want to know that there is a plan.
But that doesn't mean it has to be followed through with.
So the plan is with Free State Electric, so they...
Sir, could you give your name and address? Sorry.
Derek Hewlett, 1940 West Jackson Drive in
Thank you.
Kansas. So with Free State Electric, they cover up the first $7,000 of your electric install for a residence. If you're not putting it at a residence, then that is on you. So if you build your residence within the first 24 months of them setting your meter and heating you up with power, you have till month 36 to finish.
So that would be a powerful incentive to get your house built.
Very. So our plan is somewhere between around month 20 to start on that.
That's all I wanted. Thanks.
Thank you.
I still think, it looks like they're going to put in a significant investment in a shop. I think this needs to be rezoned because I don't know why you wouldn't rezone it. You're real close to the gas compressor station there on County Road 9.
Well, they're 15.
Any noise, his business isn't going to cause the noise that the compressor station
they're
causes, and the lights at the compressor.
They're 1,500 feet from the city limits, so they're pretty close. It's just a matter of time anyway.
Well, just for his investment to be safe, it almost needs to be a rezone, I think, because he could put this investment in, and neighbors could start complaining, and we'd have to pull his permit. So
How much does a building cost, roughly?
it was an 80 by. It
Is
says
it-
in here what it is.
It's an 80 by 85.
Yeah.
It didn't have pricing. I didn't see a price or a cost.
Well,
Changes daily.
how much is that going to cause if we delay that? How much time are we talking if we sent this back and had you go through the whole process of rezoning? How much real world delay for this gentleman would that cause?
In my experience, it's going to be 60 to 90 days to get through a rezoning process. Now, one thing I would say is that the future land use plan, if you read the staff report, does not let this be a commercial
Right.
use. It does designate it as a residential use. So one of the first criteria that the Planning Commission will consider is what does that future land use plan show. In this case, it would be difficult to push that through. So, again, just make sure that you have all the information before you make your determination.
So for him to get his business going, if we don't make a decision today, it would at least be 90 days.
But if we require a residence to be in place before the business is built, then it would be longer than that.
But we don't currently require that.
Commissioners, I just wanted to give my typical.
Can we do both?
We have rules. When you start allowing exceptions to the rules,
Right.
you create unforeseen problems.
Mhm.
We've ran into this in the past where we've allowed SUPs that then create some difficulties for us, or we have people who operate without SUPs that we have denied SUPs to that create some difficulties
Right.
for us. So rules are the rules. I always tell you, follow your rules. That's the easiest way about it. But we do have a process in place that allows for exceptions, and that's what's here. I did note on the factors to be considered, it says character of the neighborhood, not met. Zoning and uses of nearby property, not met. Those are some major hurdles that I think you have to get over, and I think you should consider as you take action. But again, there is a process in place, and that's what they're here exercising that.
Well, the Planning Commission voted unanimously, correct?
They did. They found that it was met and not, like, there was a good mixture of that neighborhood due to the.
Because I know there's there's those other businesses nearby that do work out there. I would defer to what the Planning Commission decided.
And there was not a protest petition.
No.
And the hours of operation are big to me. They're going to not be open until people leave for work, and they're going to be closed before people get back home from work. So I don't have an issue with that. I was trying to figure out if we could figure out a way to do both. Because I'm like Commissioner Smith, I hate to see somebody invest $500,000 in a building on a special use permit.
And then neighbors
But
all
they could-
complain, and then
Down the road, there was no protest petition today.
We had
But you don't know
neighbors at
later.
the meeting that were supportive, if I recall watching that.
There was one person who came and spoke in support, and I believe it
But-
was the neighbor to the east.
But that's today, and like I said,
Right.
Yeah.
down the road, you
I
invested
would like to see this
$500,000.
investment protected, because
But can we do both? Because you could get up and running. with
It doesn't
an SUV.
sound like, if I'm hearing correctly, if we send this back and it goes to a rezone, what I heard you say, and maybe you can correct me, I heard you say that the recommendation, it's going to be more difficult because it's
But what?
not meeting the land use criteria.
From a staff perspective, we can only operate within the policy.
Why
So-
can't we offer the SUP and then have them work on the rezoning?
Yeah, let's do that.
Rezone won't necessarily work because of the table, the
Well, again, I
comp plans,
can't
but we can change
make
that.
a,
But I'm just concerned of not following all of our, we keep getting ourselves in trouble.
Well, that's why I'm
We don't follow
asking, is there a
policy.
way to do both?
well, if I could offer a suggestion, if you put any caveat within the SUP, those would have to be followed to maintain that SUP from this point on. So whatever you believe is prudent with the input of legal counsel, you certainly have time to do that.
Can we have as a condition that the residence must be built?
Commissioners, I'd question whether that would be an enforceable condition.
Yeah,
I do, however, believe you could, if you wish to grant a special use permit, give it a life certain. Special use permit would be valid for 1 year, and that at that point it would expire, and that would allow the property owner during that 1 year period to apply for a rezoning.
Why wouldn't we do 24 months when the electric companies is 24 months?
I was going to say 3 years, but
Yeah. Is that your motion?
that's still not enough to protect his investment.
I feel better with 3 years than nothing.
Just to be, again, history, it's difficult once you issue one of these to.
Yeah, exactly.
But this gentleman has tried to follow all the rules. We have a lot of people come in here, they didn't follow the rules, and now they're wanting to get an SUP. So I think that there should be some credit for following the rules. I'll make a motion.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Now, the building of this size, is it going to require a sprinkler system?
Typically, in this type of use, that break line is 12,000 square feet for this occupancy. So, no. And if he needed to, he could break the building up with 2-hour walls to avoid that sprinkler requirement, if there were one, but I don't believe there is one for this.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the business doesn't have any surprises.
Yeah.
But I still feel that, Ben's, you got the compressor station right there, close. That's definitely commercial. And we could do something to protect this gentleman's investment. And he doesn't have a residence.
I just don't want to, we keep getting ourselves in trouble. Repeatedly.
That is what I thought.
That's all right.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, entertain a motion.
To conditionally approve Resolution 2023-17, a special use permit for Faster Dynamics and Auto Service and Repair Shop located at 00000 George Road.
Do we have a second?
Oh, were we going to put a time? Were we going to tie a time?
We can do a second and then have further discussion.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, further discussion?
Well, weren't we going to tie a time to that motion?
Well, we could, certainly, if you want to.
I'm not comfortable with that one.
Okay, then let's do...
amend the motion?
I would like to... I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And then I'll make the same motion with the 3-year date certain on January 1st of... I don't know. What's 3 years from now? 2026.
I had it up, Mike. I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Again, voting with Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 No?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
I just think the gentleman needs his investment protected.
Thank
Sure
you.
like to see a rezone.
He might not even get a rezone if we went that route.
Well, 3 years from now, he may not have a business.
And now you
I've
can
seen
work.
that happen.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to consider a motion to approve a road improvement agreement. Do we need anybody's staff, or are we just going to do that? Okay.
Commissioners, again, this is something that we have had on the agenda several times. We've had work sessions on it. And basically, this sets out the direction that any applicant would have to follow, regardless of the development. If they meet the threshold of the traffic impact studies, then this is the next step for that. So to do a traffic impact study, then here's the process that we would work through if there were any required improvements. So we think we have touched on the language that the board has requested, and we feel like this is at the very least a good starting point, and we will reevaluate throughout the years.
Anybody have questions for Mr. Lewis?
No.
I will entertain a motion.
I do have
Oh, go ahead.
we can do the motion first, but I have a couple
You can go ahead. We haven't started that process. Go ahead.
Is it made clear that no portion of the SUP can proceed until the road agreement is finalized and any construction improvement is completed?
So I think if you look through the development agreement and you have kind of a layout of what the steps are, it shows that if you have this agreement, then the SUP is approved as part of it as long as all the conditions and the steps are met with this. So you couldn't require a potential developer to do all these things and they do everything that you say and then deny the SUP. That would not work out.
So at what step in the process would the consideration be of the change of character of the neighborhood and all the factors? Where would that fall in the hierarchy?
Again, I think that's part of the process of before you approve, you'd be approving this, which is kind of like the conditional approval of the SUP, that then you get through all these steps, then you get to the SUP. But before you would approve this agreement, you would just make that deciding factor because, again, you don't want to require somebody to go through this process if your intention is to not issue the SUP.
So as we would be considering it under this new process, we would be at some point touching base with all those factors of our
Yes.
zoning.
Yes.
Okay. How is public health, safety, and welfare defined? Does it apply to all those along a proposed haul route? Is any consideration to be given to how hauling will impact neighboring communities that are outside of Lownwood County?
Well, that is a different portion of an SUP. That is not the road development agreement.
So in this, it's not considered that outside of the county. Correct?
Yeah, this is the road development agreement.
If improvement construction requires property acquisition beyond any easements along current roads, will the county invoke eminent domain or on behalf of a private firm?
I think any road project that requires, any road project anticipated in here is a county road project funded by the applicant.
So it would not,
we
you would,
utilize all of our-
you would say it would not be private then, it would be.
Right, it would not be a
correct.
private road. This
So-
is a public improvement.
So I think that was a question that I had a constituent ask. What is the criteria for benefit the county for approval of an SUP that is so intense that a road agreement is necessary? Is it tax revenue, jobs created, community enhancement? Where do we decide that this comes into play?
I think that's a question for the county commission, not a question for staff.
But, okay, so a large developer comes to you and they're wanting to come into the county. That's the point at which you're going to use this agreement.
If they have a development that requires a road, basically a road impact study, and that study comes back with the information that would then necessitate this type of an agreement, that's our, at the staff level, we don't get to decide which applicants get to apply and don't. Everybody has the right to apply and move forward. At some point in time, the Board of County Commissioners will be in a position where they have to make a decision based on the golden factors on whether that development would go forward.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're just now approving this, but we've sent a response over to one of the applicants. What is different when we approve this? Will then this go over to them, or will it just be in kind of a back and forth in the negotiating process?
First of all, we do not have any application right now that this would apply to. This is an agreement that we are putting in place that, or not an agreement. It's a policy basically that establishes a road improvement agreement if it was needed.
So the response we gave to the earlier applicant for them to respond to us, where you gave a lot of different criteria, this is not a part of that.
Again, we have no current application for
No,
any.
you sent a response to Call Valley,
now.
correct?
We did send them a copy of what this proposed policy would be, but we're not in any kind of negotiation with them or any discussion at all.
Well,
In fact,
I guess what I'm trying to say is before the document that you sent to them is the document, they do have a copy of this, so they know they have to comply with this.
Who are we talking about?
But we need
if
Call
any
Valley.
applicant, I want to make sure you're
Right.
clear. Any applicant going forward would have to follow this process.
Right, and I agree with
It
that.
does not matter who the applicant is, as long as they meet these thresholds.
But we did send a response to that
But
particular
that has nothing to
applicant
do with this
We did let them
document.
know.
yeah, and they have a copy of it. That's all I was getting to. So they're aware.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, I'd like to impress upon you, this document was prepared after a great deal of study from professional engineering consultants and your staff. With respect to negotiation, this really is quite frankly going to be presented more or less non-negotiable.
Right.
If your proposed development requires a public improvement or an improvement to a public road, this is the criteria and the procedure you will have to follow, because all applicants must comply with the same set of criteria, and this document is designed to protect the public interests in the public roads.
Okay. Motion to approve a road improvement agreement.
Motion, do I have a second? I'll second. Begin voting with Commissioner Steben.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
No.
consider a motion to approve Board Order 2023-4 memorializing findings previously made by the Board upon the hearing of the matter of the vacation of an unused portion of State Street. That was before some, Counselor?
Madam Chair, members of the board, if I could provide just a short history on this. You previously considered a request to vacate a certain portion of State Road that has been long unused, decades and decades of non-use, which is one of the statutory criteria. You made the findings that the road should be vacated for that purpose. My general intent at that time was that the road records of the county, which are the official records with respect to the locations and dimensions of dedicated road right-of-way, would be annotated to show that that section had been vacated. However, at a staffing level, talking about public works and particularly planning and zoning, they felt that it would be best to provide notice to the public that a section of roadway affecting adjoining properties had been vacated by the preparation and filing of a document that could be recorded in the Office of the Register of Deeds that would reference back to all of the adjoining properties. The statute that allows you to vacate roads does not require a resolution. It doesn't reference a board order. It just says you will make findings and then vacate that road. This, however, I think is a step that provides additional notice to the public. And from planning and zoning purposes, they would have an additional reference item with respect to any subdivision plat that this affects.
That was a $100 bill way to say, we need to record this in a register of deeds also.
Madam Chair, I move
$200.
It's gone up.
I move that we approve Board Order 2023-4 memorializing the findings made by the board upon the hearing of the matter of the vacation of the unused portion of State Street.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, now we need to consider a motion to approve a First Amendment to contract for certain improvements to 155th Street as it lies in the city of Basel, and the waiver by the city of Basel of connection fees for sewer district number 5. All right. Who wants to?
Commissioners, this is the change that was requested
Right.
at your work session with the city. It allows for basically progress payments on the construction of 155th Street. The current agreement does not allow for that. It was contemplated when we entered into that agreement that it would be a wrap-up at the end of the project, and we would then provide funding. The city commission asked you to reconsider that at their work session.
Right.
Yep. They
Okay.
voted to pass it last week.
Right.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the first amendment to the contract for certain improvements of 155th Street as it lies in the city of Basel, and the waiver by the city of Basel of connection fees for sewer district 5.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Go. Okay, now we are moving down to presentations and discussion items. We're going to have some discussion on the 2024 budget. Mr. Lothry, did you want to?
Again, this is just an item I added to the agenda as we move forward. I told you I would put this on the agenda so that if you had any further questions, you'd have the opportunity to do that, and it would be an agenda item. And then any discussion, obviously next week will be our meeting to decide on revenue neutral. So any changes, proposed additions, now is a great time to do that so that we can have that prepared. Not that you will be approving the budget next week, but that you will be authorizing the clerk to send out the revenue neutral rate notices that are required statutorily.
And I see that we have Sheriff Dedeke with us this morning, if there's any questions for him. And congratulations on becoming a first-time grandpa.
When do we expect to vote on the budget? I mean, what you know?
It's August. Sure? It's the end of August, which is pretty much the window that we have to meet all of the state requirements. That's the soonest we could do it. I think you have the last week or 2 weeks of August until the first or second week of September. So it'll be I think the 26th or somewhere in that.
Mark, are you operating on the premise right now that it's mill levy stays flat? Is that what you're looking at?
That was the direction.
Okay.
That's what we
Let me ask you this. We also talked about Todd's department about folks in there that we put in place and paid for. It wasn't supposed to be a full-time. How did you address that in the budget? Did you keep it in?
The Board of County Commissioners over the last several years have authorized additional positions. I think the ones you're referring to, the county attorney's office, were the ones that were funded by ARPA funds.
Right.
You authorized 2 attorneys, which those positions were never filled, so those are gone. They're not in this budget. That money went back into the ARPA funds because they weren't filled at the end, per your direction, as of January of this year. The other positions, I believe, were administrative in nature, and I do believe that at least one, if not 2 of those were filled. But the discussion at that time was that by the county attorney that he had some long-term employees who would be retiring, and that through the adjustment of wages he would be able to absorb that into his overall budget, understanding that the ARPA funds are just a one-time short fix, not a long-term.
Okay. So let me ask the sheriff. Excuse me, Mike. Since I got in, capacity is full right now at the county jail, and I guess what I'm asking is, you're not taking any outside folks, sheriff, or have I been informed wrong?
We are sitting at an average daily population of about 150. Capacity is 220. So, no, we are not at capacity. We are not housing for outside counties for the purpose of holding their extra inmates. And that's simply due to the fact of most of the agencies that we were partnering with have made improvements to their facilities, added beds, that type of thing. In addition to COVID is still a realistic concern in the detention setting, so we have ceased largely because of that. Now we still hold for Kansas Department of Corrections, transport companies, and we do hold as a courtesy for our partners as needed, but nothing to the extent that we were doing pre-COVID.
And Sheriff, is there a revenue stream that comes when you hold from outside?
There was
a county reimbursed?
At one point, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Andy.
Question for the Mark on the county attorney's budget. Last week we talked about the two administrative positions that were ARPA funded, and he also had the 2 attorneys. He did not hire the 2 attorneys. That was put back into the ARPA funds. But the 2 positions, the administrative positions, were hired, and we indicated that it would be funded on a temporary basis, but they're in the budget currently. Is that correct?
Yes.
So last week when we had this discussion, do we need to? My feeling was last week we were asking that those 2 be taken out. I don't know. We didn't take a vote. Do we need to take a vote on that?
Well, yes. Anything that's direction should be voted upon by the full board. As far as removing those positions, the county attorney, it's his budget and his staffing, and he has the authority under state statute to determine what level of staffing that he needs. But you also set the budget, and he has to operate within that budget.
Well, it doesn't have to be staffing. It could be budget.
I would suggest to you that if you were recommending cuts, that you give that direction to the county attorney and allow him to review his budget and decide whether or where any cuts might come from.
Well, what I was saying, and it doesn't have to be staff positions, but if you have 2 positions that were funded through federal ARPA funds that are one-time funding, that you should not incorporate those into your next budget, and that should be a decision that we should make, that those have to come out.
I think, Mike, I'm hearing, I think what we're looking at is we're not going to classify, because he oversees his budget as he sees fit, but if we're wanting to reduce his budget and overall 2%, 3%, whatever the county commissioner, even if they want to do it, then that's the way we should look at it, because it's his budget to make it work on whatever funding is set aside for it. Not so much the employees or something like that, but just in general.
Well, if the budget for, and I talked to Mr. Lawford this morning about the amount, probably around $60,000. So in order to remove that, we would have to take $120,000 just off the budget, off of his budget request. That would remove those two positions that were one-time positions.
Mark, you've had a conversation since in the last couple of weeks after we gave you direction on that to reduce his budget. Have you had a conversation with Todd?
Yeah, so first, I just want to say, again, questions for the county attorney's budget are probably best directed to the county attorney.
Right.
The proposed budget that the county attorney submitted, I did make adjustments to it because trying to get to the flat mill levy, it would have been difficult without some kind of adjustment.
Right.
There. So I did make those adjustments. I did talk to the county attorney about those, and he was reviewing his budget to make sure he could work within those parameters. He did not surprisingly, an additional cut of over and above that he felt would be very difficult. He was reviewing his budget. I have not heard since that meeting. I would be happy to set up another meeting with the county attorney and the Board of County Commissioners if you'd like. I can schedule depending upon his schedule. But other than that, when we met, he was not able to identify further cuts that he could take in his budget.
Well, his budget in the last 2 years, county attorney's budget is down. Find the right line here. Has gone up 74%. So we ask everybody to come in with a 4%. So he's 70% over.
You're not talking about 1 year.
No, we're talking about a 2 year,
Yeah,
but
so
it's the 2022
we asked
budget
him to try to come in at 4%. That's
for the
what
1
we
year.
Started with was trying to come in at 4% for this year.
So he ought to be coming in at 8%, nowhere near 70%, 74%.
That's your
Over multiple years is what you're referring to.
Yep, right over 2 years.
So
That's 2 years, not a whole lot of years.
But there was adjustments that were made because we made adjustments to our budget on what we were going to be paying our employees. He was losing employees to us because we were able to pay more than what he was able to pay. And so this is my understanding. And so what we had was the county attorney was also losing county attorneys to other jurisdictions because they were able to pay more than what we were able to pay. And so I think, now this is the explanation I was given, that there were requests for increase in the budget to be able to pay for the services of legal counsel, the assistant county attorneys at the county attorney's office, and to bring the wages of the support staff in line with what we were paying other employees, which resulted in an increase in his budgets as well.
Commissioners, on multiple occasions over the last, I'll just say 5 years, the county attorney has come in and asked to add staff, and each time, for the most part, the board has authorized it. So that's the growth.
Right.
When you have a budget that's probably 80% wages, that's where most of his expenditures are, is for staff. When you add staff, it's going to grow much faster than the normal CPI. But those are positions that were authorized by this board. Now, I think there may be other positions, but again, it's not for me to decide. That's something the county attorney has to review on the necessity for the positions that he has and make that justification to this board of county commission.
Well, just as an example, in 2019, his budget was $1.5 million, and now his request is $2.670 for this year, and you have made some adjustments to that, but that was his initial request. So it's we had 2019 to 2020 was a 35% increase. 2020 was 11.82, and then over the last 2 years it's been 74%. So it's just, I know that the question is, and you said how many attorneys? They have 8 or 9 attorneys?
I think think that's what the county attorney said when he was here.
And then 17 administrative staff that we're funding. So at some point, you've got to say we don't have the funds to continue to increase these budgets.
Commissioners, I know the last few times, I think my statement was that this growth is unsustainable in that department. So that again, I think if you want to have these conversations, we should probably invite the county attorney over here so that you would have the opportunity to ask him these questions directly and then make a decision. That would be my suggestion. Obviously, you set the bar here, so if you go back and say, this is where we want you to be, then I will work with him to try to reach that.
Now, what is the consequence of just maybe it's Mr. Van Paris or you? The consequence when we have the county attorney and the sheriff both statutorily can establish their budgets, correct? I mean,
the budget is established by the Board of County.
Right, but they can challenge in court if we do not appropriately fund them. I'm just trying to figure out what are the consequences of if we do not.
Madam
Yes.
Chairman, members of the board, in deference to Commissioner Cullors and my $5 answer to your question, is you are required by law to provide adequate funding to the offices of the sheriff and county attorney. They prepare their budget and submit a budget request to you. You, however, do have the final statutory authority to set their budgets, subject to that requirement. Within their budget, once approved, it is entirely at their discretion how that budget is expended, particularly with respect to staffing.
And just a note on that is we're not really talking about any kind of reductions. We're talking about reductions in the rate of increase in growth. This isn't, there's no discussion up here about cutting the county attorney's budget. There's no discussion about cutting the sheriff's budget or any of these other budgets. There's discussion about how fast it should grow. And that's the discussion. And so we're not going to inadequately fund any of these agencies. We are just maybe not going to be able to sustain a 74% increase over 2 years. And so I guess Mark needs direction, so I'm just going to make a motion that the 2 positions that were funded by ARPA within the county attorney's office, that we reclaim the $160,000 to the general fund of the budget from his proposed 2024 budget.
Well, you got a motion. There's no
Have a
second.
motion. Do we have a second?
If there's no second.
I agree with your concept, but I'm worried about the definition. I don't know if we should get that specific.
That's what I was getting ready to say, Jeff. I don't think
we can't tell him.
That's right. I wouldn't use it as staff. I would say if you want to cut his budget, if that's
Okay, then I make a motion we reduce the county attorney's proposed 2024 budget by $160,000.
Can I clarify something? His proposed budget or the currently proposed budget?
The currently proposed budget that you've been working on.
Well,
I think the county attorney needs to.
yeah, I agree.
I don't think we can tell him a dollar amount. I think we can ask him to reconsider and tell him what our concerns are and have a talk with the county administrator over exactly what you're
I
saying.
think he's already had a talk, you know. You met with him, correct?
I did. Again, I would be happy to invite the county attorney over here so you all can have this conversation.
But
directly.
we're going to be asked next week to vote on exceeding the revenue neutral level of the budget. And I know we're going to have to exceed the revenue neutral, but you don't. But it's one of those things that is all or nothing.
I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just trying to figure out how to say it. How do we put it?
Not put people in.
If we don't get a good position that we take, that this budget has to come down.
I'd like to see him come back forward before I make a decision. I'd like him to talk to us again.
Well,
I agree.
if we have on the agenda next, do we want to have a meeting before that with the county administrator, with the county attorney prior to next week's meeting? So Monday or Tuesday? I'm just.
I'm good for Monday.
But we need to check
Bill,
Monday or Tuesday.
based on his availability as well, but I mean, is that?
That's fine, but we have met with him once, so we.
Yeah, but the more I do this, the more questions I have. When I start taking
Right.
somebody's or proposing to cut someone's budget, even though I think that 70% is way too high, and we are in tough times, it just generates more questions I want to be comfortable with to make sure they can still produce the results they've been doing, because they've been doing a good job as far as getting them through court. That's why I was asking the sheriff, how do we have people staying in there a long time before they can get before the judge, and how long does it take to go from what stage A to stage B, and how much is it charging for the sheriff to have to be able to house these people? So I think it just generates more questions, Mike.
Yeah, and I'm fine with having a meeting with the sheriff,
That's-
but at this,
I'm
what
fine
we're
with the
talking
sheriff.
about,
The sheriff's here.
I think,
I'm fine with
not
him.
the sheriff, I mean the county attorney. But I think people need to realize, we're not talking about cuts. We're talking about reducing the increase. I mean, if we were talking about cuts, I mean, we have been very fortunate. I mean, there's a double-edged sword with these valuations. The good part of that is there's a lot of revenue that's coming in.
Mark, the other thing is, too, you've said you've already met with him. When we meet on Monday or Tuesday, I would like to at least know how much I don't have that in front of me, maybe I missed it, how much your meeting resulted in reduction in his budget.
Yeah, so I provided you all with the proposed, what I was proposing in order to get to that flat mill levy, probably a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Get that.
I had to watch my dad for a week, so my mind went blank, so.
I'll get that for you again, and then I will attempt to schedule with the county attorney.
Okay.
For next week. Obviously, today I can't tell you what day that might be, but before the end of this week, I'll have that figured out. And maybe it would be just early on the agenda on Wednesday. If nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Wasn't the
but before-
original request about 280,000?
For the county attorney?
Yeah, increase, 280,000 increase.
No, it was more than that.
It was more than that, yeah.
That's why I gotta say it again.
I'm just,
The original
let's take a look
was,
here.
just a second, it was going to go from 2,489,990, and that was the adopted budget. I don't know what he expended this year, but it was going to go from 2,489 to 2,670.
About 280,000.
Yeah.
So what Mark did is went from 267,373 down to 2,426,548. So, but that still has those two ARPA positions within it that were one-time funded positions.
We need to talk with him.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to make it really hard to vote to go above revenue neutral and hand the keys to the Mercedes if we're not having a strong commitment to reducing these budgets.
Yeah.
Reducing the increases.
Yeah.
Not
Right.
reducing the budget.
Well, what we said.
You'd have to reduce the budgets to remain revenue neutral.
Right, but we're talking about
Yeah.
at least getting some of these budgets under control.
Well, I think my communication is the key on that. Like I said, I've got some more questions that I'm sure he can answer, but I think it, just being fair to him, that we'd want to
Yeah,
have
he can
that.
come
If
the next
the
time.
Madam Chair wants to do that.
okay. Well, I think that,
I will invite him over,
just see if you can,
see what his schedule is.
if he has some, and if everybody has kind of flexible
As long
schedules.
as I know.
Yeah, as long as I
Give me
know.
24 hours notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, outside agencies, Mark. We had met with the Port Authority several months ago, and I asked if they could come up with a different revenue stream than if they would come up with a plan. Did they ever come up with a plan of funding other than just, we cannot fund them at the level they need to be funded. If the funding they need to play the game here, we can't provide with just out of our budgets. I didn't know if there was any other scenarios of ways of funding them, like they get a portion of the taxes of a business they bring in for so many years or something like that would help them.
I think, Doug, you brought this up, and I think I've heard it from Mark, That is something that we really should put on the table to look at, because this will only help them
Exactly.
if they're coming back in here, because we can't continue this, and we want to make sure they get the correct funding. But when a business comes into something, if you get 5%, 10, whatever the number may be, then they get to put that back in to help with the next one. But just paying cash after cash after cash doesn't work.
We can't provide enough funding
That's right.
for what they need
Yeah.
to play the game, to get these, to offer incentives and whatnot. So, I mean,
Just
I
something.
was hoping they would come up with some other plan other than just us giving them money. I mean, I think it's doable. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I'm sure there's
But
other places.
I was hoping they would came back with something.
I think that was a conversation we actually started a couple of years ago when we were talking about the makeup and the funding from the county. We brought that up, that they have some kind of a performance thing in those. So if you're helping a business get a grant, that you keep a percentage of it as your administrative oversight. If you are working with these businesses to come in and get all these incentives, like the Tonganoxie Industrial Park with the two big developments that have happened down there, that if the Port Authority or the LCDC, and I think was what we were actually talking about, was involved in those things, that they figure out a way to integrate a fee into those things so that they are then self-funded and it's a pay for performance. I think at the time we had that meeting with some of the folks from the LCDC, that they understood the process. I think one of them said they even used that in their own business model, but we have not seen anything come from that. And I know last week it was also brought up by Commissioner Smith,
Right.
and we have not seen anything yet.
I think it's something to talk about. I mean, it only helps them, because we can't continue writing those checks. Anyway.
No, it's not enough for what they need.
That's exactly right.
Well, do we have any more questions for Sheriff Dedeke? If we don't,
I think he's having a good time being here with us today.
well, I'm just saying that.
I don't.
I had a question for
Okay,
him.
because otherwise he's.
Well, the only thing, I mean, your budget's great. I think you did a fantastic job on your budget. I mean, really tight budget, really good budget. The only thing is that I'm concerned about, just looking at your budget, is the carryovers from year to year. And when you're looking at tight budgets, you're looking at some of that carryover. Maybe we can reclaim that for getting other portions of the government funded here. So in 2020, you had a $400,000 carryover. 21, it was 378. 22, 447, and on the current spending trajectory for this year, it's about 400,000. So, is there any room in that carryover for adjustment so we could reclaim some of that carryover for the budget?
So 2020 and to a large degree 2021, I think, are a reflection of what COVID did. Everything shut down, from court, transports, training, availability of things that we normally purchase, that type of thing, and that's an anomaly for 2020 and 2021. Last year was really the first year that things started opening up, and to some degree there's still an inavailability of some of the things that we have programmed to purchase. Looking back historically, it's the remaining budget authority is much less. All the way down to 2016 when I had $129 remaining in the budget. So, the budget's something that we are very keen at looking at on a daily basis. That's what I've charged my staff with doing, and they keep me up to date. Factors that affect the budget. Obviously, the budget I inherited when I took office in 2013 was approved the previous August. 2014 to 2017, I think we did a good job honing our practices, determining what was needed. 2018 to 2019, that's when we started seeing the effects of civil discourse, where law enforcement was largely projected as an evil entity, and it affected a lot of the hiring, and that's, I think, going to be a big piece of that remaining budgetary authority was vacant positions. 2020, we're dealing with the cap that the state of Kansas had imposed, and to that degree, almost $3 million was added to my budget because we were exempt as law enforcement, and employee benefits were put back into our budget. So that increased the budget. And then again, with 2020, you had COVID, and then 2020 through 2021, just the rollover of benefits and that type of thing. So, we recognize that to fund a position and not being able to fill it, that's taxpayer money that, in effect, didn't have to be collected in the first place. I get that 100%. To that degree, I gave up willingly 3 positions last year because I did not think that it would be likely that those positions would be filled during that budget year. Didn't feel I was in a position to do that again this year. As we sit right now, I have 9 vacancies. 9 vacancies out of 121. And I would argue that that's probably a better statistic than an office of 15 having 3 vacancies. And it's not a plug and play. Each vacancy is a very specific function that they perform. You could almost argue that they're individual departments. So I've got 2 vacancies in detention. I've got 1 vacancy for a nurse. I have 1 vacancy in security. I have 1 vacancy in dispatch. I have 1 vacancy in detectives. And I have 3 vacancies in patrol for a total of 9. As we sit this morning, I believe it's 15. I have 13 applications we're processing, 2 that are in background, that if by some luck of fate would fill all 9 of these vacancies. And the other thing to remember is that it's a moving thing. It's not the same position that is being hired and then vacated. If you've got 30 detention officers, you're probably going to have 4 or 5 throughout the year that quit. You plug in a new one, another one will quit.
How much carryover do you think is reasonable to build into your budget?
If I could, I don't want to step on your toes. We don't build carryover into the budget. The carryover happens naturally by the positions that are open.
Yeah, but when we're doing budgeting,
there is carryover, but it's not built in. We didn't budget for $400,000 of carryover. That $400,000 occurred because the positions that were open throughout the year, the money wasn't spent. Now that money that's left over goes back to the general fund as carryover for the next year. It automatically goes back.
I understand.
I just want to make sure.
But you base your budget on what was spent last year. That's how you base a budget, on what was spent last year.
I just wanted to correct that we don't budget for carryover.
Right.
It just happens.
Right. We don't budget technically in the budget for carryover, but every year we're getting carryover. So it's a unstated budgeting for carryover because we're getting it every year. So my question is, if we're trying to build this tight budget and it's really hard this year.
But the unfilled positions are the exception to that. The unfilled positions are the exception.
I'm not talking about unfilled positions. I'm talking about the carryover on the budget.
But that's the exception to last year's budget.
If you're doing a tight budget for your office, how low could we safely bring your care?
I feel, Commissioner, that I've prepared a tight budget for my office. I have to consider, last year we had over 12,000 hours of overtime. It gets paid out at time and a half. That's roughly $472,000.
But we're still headed, according to the clerk's office, we're still headed for around a $400 million, $400,000, another year of that. So I just want to see.
But a lot of expenses haven't come in yet either.
But when we're doing the budget, we got to. When this is going on year after year after year, so we try to get a budget that's even. I know yours is tight, and actually on all the expenses, it was a great budget. But when we're talking about this carryover,
if we could squeeze a little more out of it.
You know, Mike, if I could just speak for a second, excuse me, Sheriff. You know, I believe last year they reduced it by 3 positions. In a world that we live in today, nowadays, the last thing I want to do is not give the law enforcement, whether it be a city or a sheriff, the opportunity to continue to make things like the way we live in this Leavenworth County area, where I feel safe and we don't have a lot of the issues going on that a lot of the country has. So I think one of the things we look at is when you've got 3 openings or 4 openings, or you're carrying 400,000, that is such a rotational thing. I mean, you're going to have people coming and going. I know I've talked to other chiefs, I've talked to sheriffs, and it hasn't gotten much better because of what Sheriff was saying about how nobody wanted to be an officer because, you know, everybody was looking bad at the officer. And I tell you, 21 years I held it, and it's the most pride position I ever held was being the chief of police out in Lansing. But I also know you've got to have the resources and be able to get to it. I'd love for the sheriff to say we've got all the positions filled and we can do more to help the citizens of Leavenworth County. But in reality, that's not it. So if we start reducing that, I think we take away a little bit of that. I think the three positions last year were a great step to try to help this county budget, because we get hit all the time as county commissioners on the mill levy, when we all know it's not just us. We're 26%. It's the schools, it's the fire department, it's everything else. And we really asked them to do hard. And I'm convinced that county administrator has met with these people, and we're going to meet with Todd again, and brought this down pretty close. But there has to come a breaking point, too, that we have to be able to provide these services. And you know, as a county commissioner, we signed up to take the hits to make the tough positions. And I think that taking the 3 down last year was definitely going in the right direction and try to help this budget. So, Sheriff, I'm fine with your budget.
Well, once again, we're not talking about cutting anybody's budget. We're talking about carryovers that are significant and that are, from a fiscal conservative standpoint, if you want to run the budget, you have to go on what the amount expended was, and you have to then look at what if we actually spent the money or not. And I would rather budget real tight, and you have to come over here and say, I'm going to have to hire a couple more positions. Can you fund that? Than to be running where we're having $400,000 carryover year after year after year, and then we could get some of this money into protecting some. I mean, there's a lot of priorities. So,
Absolutely. But
and I support law enforcement as well.
Let me remind you though, that, two separate departments were placed under the sheriff's office. So we took those in. Security at the courthouse here, that was thrust upon us. Those are positions that I could place elsewhere and fill vacancies, but because of the need or the desire to have security over here, I can't use those in other places. Now, I'll be glad to take those and reappropriate them, but then you're going to be left without security at the courthouse. And
nope, can't do that.
Something that
I don't like that at all.
I just think that Sheriff Dedeke has expressed that his budget is as lean as he is comfortable with having it in order to operate, and so I'm going to respect.
And your original request was about 3%, correct?
Right.
2.9, I
Just a
think.
little under 3%.
Like
Which was
2.9
under
or
our
2.
And you've
we
adjusted it
asked.
That's
since.
4, yeah.
I have not.
Oh, you have not?
We did not
Okay.
adjust that one because
No.
it came in under the.
Yeah, because
what I had asked before, it came in.
And he came in under
Yeah.
what we had asked
Yeah.
for, so I,
Okay.
2.9
Well,
works everybody.
you're looking, when you're doing budgets, you're looking at where there's money that's going year after year is going back into the general fund. You're looking at how much we spent, and this is an area where there is money going back into the general fund every year, and it would appear that we are not correctly budgeting.
You make your case, Mike.
So bear that in mind next week when I vote on the revenue neutral.
well,
Let's
that
move
I don't know
on,
how you
Chair.
could vote
we won't be
on
surprised how you
revenue
vote
neutral.
fine.
Well,
I don't know how
Let's
we
move on, Chair. I'm ready to go.
I'm not going to give the keys to the Mercedes to the teenager that's not going to cut the budgets.
Well, and we appreciate you looking for dollars, Commissioner Stephen, but you have to look at the big picture also.
I do.
Just like Sheriff Dedeke said,
No, you're
you look at the bigger
micromanaging.
picture, there's two other departments now. We now don't pay those extra fees to have those two separate departments. They were absorbed into the sheriff's department, other than
And
the
I'm not
employee.
talking about cutting the sheriff's department. I'm talking about he gets his budget,
Right,
but it
right.
just doesn't get the budget for the carryover that we've been having.
Well, what if he fills all of them, Mike? Then there wouldn't be a carryover.
That's
Well,
what I'm
but
saying.
we
You have to
haven't
subtract.
historically done that, so
But-
we have to make a
but he-
budget here.
But he feels he needs those positions,
Well,
and if he could fill
You
them.
know what?
If you
We're
didn't
doing a
think he
budget.
needed them-
This is a family conversation. We're doing a budget.
Well, if he
You're
didn't think
right.
he needed them, I don't think he would have asked for them. He already said there were 3 that he could do without, so I'm.
That was last year's
comfortable with
budget.
that.
I appreciate what you-
And when he's
Mike.
not filling those positions, as I think he indicated, he has to pay time and a half to.
Which eats
have
up a
somebody else
budget.
that fills those positions
Yeah.
for their overtime.
And
so
I don't want this to be
that eats that up very
misconstrued.
quickly.
Sheriff Dedeke, I completely support the work you do, and I am 100% behind it. I'm just trying to.
Take your money. So why don't we?
I'm just trying to get.
Defunding the police.
You're looking at a whole spectrum of the budget, and nothing that we do here would reduce your budget, but it would, in actuality, as long as you have those carryovers. So, anyway, that's
Can
my.
we move on?
Thank you,
We beat him
Sheriff.
up
We
enough.
appreciate
Thank
your
you, Sheriff.
time. Thanks for coming over, and again.
Aren't you glad you came to see us?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, we're not going to go to executive session yet. Instead, we're going to go to additional public comment first. And Mr. Wagner, I believe you would like to come forward and speak with us today, please.
Good morning.
John Wagner.
Good morning. John Wagner, 22578 Easton Road, Easton, Kansas. You guys haven't heard from me for a little bit, but I'm here just in concerns to see if there's any progress on the smell, the odor coming from the landfill that's directly to the south of me across the road. I'm also concerned with the hours of operation. It seems like right now I leave in the mornings sometimes at 6:20, 6:30, and I will meet several trucks on the road going to the landfill. Now, I don't know if they're just going up there sitting until they wait to operation because I'm gone, but it just seems like they're getting earlier and earlier. And there has been several days in the past month which I know they get approval from planning and zoning if they're going to run late, but it just seems like there's been several hours of late operations that you can sit over there and hear them going. And I hear through the grapevine that it's personal use and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, just kind of concerned on where's the line on what's in play with the new MOU, and just got some concerns. So, speaking, that's all I have. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
Come back anytime. Yes, I'm ready for an executive
All
session.
right, Madam Chair, I move that the board recess for a closed executive meeting for the discussion of potential litigation involving the legal interest of the county as justified by KSA 75-4319B2 for legal consultation with the legal counsel for the board, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, and that the board resume meeting, open meeting at 11:05 in the meeting room of the board. Present in the executive meeting will be Commissioner Culverson Cause, Mike Smith, Doug Smith, Mike Stevens, Senior County Counselor, Misty Brown, David Van Perrys, and Mark Lawfrey.
Second.
Motion and second. Begin voting with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 We are in executive session.
Let the record show the board has returned to regular session at 11:05. No action was taken and no decisions were made. The subject was limited to the legal interest of the county.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to close out our meeting by, anybody have anything to report? We'll start with Commissioner
I was
Stevens.
in the parade last night. Commissioner Smith was in the parade. It was a nice event. There's a lot of nice fireworks.
Commissioner Culverson?
Just over this last week, I met with several constituents over the statement that I made last week. A lot of stuff they just didn't know, so they had a lot more questions about it. And then also we had the Easton City fireworks last night. It gets bigger and bigger every year. Also, I wanted to mention, too, I was going to do it during the discussions on the budget. Just to be clear, we did not instruct the county administrator to raise the mill levy, like it said in the paper. That was a misprint. I was hoping to catch
We
it
said
on
level.
this here. We are not going to raise everyone's taxes across the county 14.7% or whatever it's been saying. 14.8 yeah. And our goal is to hold the mill levy flat and only raise the bottom line of our budget about the cost of living. And if somebody else has a different, that's what I thought our consensus was on the board.
Yeah.
The meetings I was in.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe.
That's all I got.
Well, and they are going to see that we're vigorously debating the budget, and it is being debated.
Yeah.
It's being discussed.
I'm sure I just have first of all, Commissioner Corbison's absolutely right. I've had some people contact me, reference his statement that he wrote, and there's a lot of half-truths being sent out there, but the education or the folks coming back and asking me, and then me telling them to go back to their source, something like that, they were kind of surprised on. So it was a good back and forth. Also, Lansing put on another excellent Independence Day celebration, a lot of fireworks last Saturday. That's all I have.
Okay, well, I actually did do something while I was at a conference last week for the drug courts, and there were 7,000 attendees, so there were a lot of people there. It was very interesting, and then I also participated by Zoom for the KCATA board meeting on Wednesday afternoon. So.
I just had the City of Basehor meeting last Wednesday, and we did, of course, with Mike, the parade yesterday or last night at Basehor. And I also had some folks, was pretty impressed with your lengthy narrative of the county.
Vicky missed that.
Well, and actually, I've had some people tell some other people, you really need to watch that meeting on your
Statement of facts, yeah.
Statement of facts.
And I know it was long, but I tried to touch on everything people had issues over that,
It could have been longer.
It could have been.
It could have been
It
longer.
could have been.
And it, unlike some of the stuff that's in the paper, it's actually facts.
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
Something else too on that. I think I'd also say a lot of people reached out for Commissioner Corbison to have copies made of that. I would encourage you to do that because I'd have that in hand. It's good reading material, not just what you said, but to have it in your hand when you go to talk to people about it. I think it's serving well, Jeff.
Like I said, we have lived it. When we were talking about, Commissioner Steve's talking about, we're not talking about cutting budgets. Well, you remember them budget years? We had to cut 5%.
Every year for a couple
Every year we
years.
had to cut 5%.
Yeah, for 4 or 5 years.
And now we're living with the consequences.
Now we're dealing with the consequences.
That's the problem, is now we are dealing with the consequences.
Payday is someday.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can kick the can down the road for so long, and then somebody has to pay the piper.
We have on our bridges.
That's the problem.
We
Exactly.
really have. So,
Okay, well, if
I move we adjourn.
Second.
voting,
Aye.
Aye.
aye. We're adjourned.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
gentlemen.